Hey guys, Jeremy here at My Way MFG. If you watched the last video, we got the truck started up and running, but I was sucking out of that plastic gas tank in the back. I'd like to go ahead and get the gas tank finished off in this video and get it under there and running on its own gas tank. I didn't want to mount the gas tank until I got the gas gauge figured out, because there's never going to be a way to tell how much gas is in there. I've had a lot of ideas going through my head. None of them are working. So goes it. But let me show you what I've thought of. Let me show you what failed, and let me show you where I'm going next. I had found a package of these inside in a drawer, and those are 3/8 for ID, like clear vinyl 3/8 tubing, 3/8 barbs. And I had thought about welding a bung on the bottom of the gas tank right down here, putting a barb fitting with clear tubing run up, and then just use it like a water column sight glass. That's a real simple, easy way to do it, except I'd have to weld the tank. So, and you'd have to look underneath to tell your gas level. I was trying to think of ways to do it without having to weld on the gas tank or cut on the gas tank. Plus, it'd be nice not to have to look underneath every time. And I got to thinking about floats, right? Get a float in the tank somehow. So I Googled online, how much weight will a wine cork float and support? And it said 1/4 ounce. I also Googled, what's an example of an ounce? And they said a pencil weighs about an ounce. So I figured I would need 4 wine bottle corks just to lift a pencil, if I was going to make a float out of corks. So I went to Farm King, and they had these 2 really big corks, and I think those would fit through the opening on the gas tank, although I haven't tried it yet. Right now I got these on some 1/8" round rod, but let me show you why. My drawing ain't so great, but if you're picturing this as a side view of the gas tank, and this up here is our filler opening, it would be nice to have a bracket coming down from the top of the tank to the center line of the tank, a float rod coming out with a cork on it, protruding back here like an inch or so, and then a pivot point and a rod sticking up. That way you would have all of this leverage out on this arm, moving this shorter back piece that would probably support quite a bit of weight, and it would read real accurately. You know, that's really the best way to do that, and that's how that should be done. I have thought all week about how I could do that. The opening at the top of the gas tank's probably about 1.5 inches, and you get into that building a ship in a bottle scenario where I just can't figure out a way to get all that in there without cutting a hole in the top of the gas tank. I don't want to do that, because if I cut a hole, then I got to make a plate and a gasket and try to get it all sealed down. Probably a bunch of drive screws in it, and it's probably going to leak. And the way that's countersunk back in between those sheet metal brackets, I'm going to have to drop the tank, and I don't want to cut the top if I don't have to. So I thought of another way to get a float in there, which wasn't going to be as good, but I thought might work. That was this scenario. I've got a sleeve coming down, rod going straight up with a float at the bottom of it. But I just tested that idea, and what happens, the rod wants to pull to the side of the guide, and there's not enough buoyancy for the float to come up smoothly. So it won't even hardly lift itself. But if I was to hold that in the water sideways, then it works pretty good. Which takes us back to this. So I don't think this idea is really going to work very well at all. And I thought that would give me a guide wire sticking up that I could see. But let me show you what I mocked up for that. So this is where I was at with it. The top of my filler neck, I've got it made up. I ran a piece of 3/16 brake line through there, 1/8" round rod with the corks on the bottom. I had this piece off of the heater where the handles and the legs come together. I was going to cut that and weld that in there for a bottom guide for my bottom brace for this guide. It was going to go inside of there like that. And then I thought this will just float up and down and I'll have this rod sticking up. But that rod is almost too tight in there. If I put something in there that wasn't quite so tight, it might work, but I think it's just going to want to bend over to the side. I just didn't have enough buoyancy for that to lift good. But I pulled this out, I held it in the water like that, and it took quite a bit of pressure to push it down. So I'm thinking this isn't going to work so well, and I need to go back to that first idea. But how do I get all that to fit, right? Anyway, that was going to get cut off there where I got those pencil marks, and I was going to weld that in there, and that would have held that guide straight. And I thought, all them crackheads and tweakers, say you pull up at Walmart parking lot, you go inside to get groceries and you leave the truck out there, or they're trying to get a hose down through your gas tank so they can siphon your gas. They would hit this bracket. They don't have a very long attention span anyway. They would probably give up and just move over to the next truck. So I thought that would be good. Oh, and then I welded these two pieces together, and I kept holding my hand over the bottom and checking for leaks. That's before I drilled this hole. And it never really dripped, but I could see it get wet in a couple spots, but I couldn't really ever figure out where. And I thought I could keep chasing that with the welder. I just took a little JB weld and rubbed my finger around there and just coated the whole weld so that it doesn't leak anymore. Let me show you where I'm at now, though. Inside in the drawer, I found an old umbrella. Look at those little tiny pivot points and wires. That almost looks like the design I need to get a float arm horizontal and then get tied into the top arm for, you know, as a connection for something to read a needle. Or I'm wondering if I can get this. This is pretty small stuff. I'm wondering if I can just reuse that somehow and get it all down in the gas tank with a couple tack welds on it and corks on one end of that. And I don't know. Let's take some of this apart and see what we can come up with. I was just at an old boy's house and we were changing some water filters, and he had one up in the rafters in the basement ceiling. And he said, "You want me to get you a ladder?" So he walked out to the garage and grabbed a 5-6 foot wooden step ladder, and he was walking in front of me. Walked right down the stairs, whether this is as quick as could be, you know, no effort whatsoever. We got down there and I said, "How old are you?" And he said, 88. And I thought to myself, wow, you know, carrying a ladder is not really a big thing, but he done it with no effort at all. And I thought, if a guy gets to be 88 and can still do that well, that's what we all hope for, right? I'm trying to use this small arm here to push that float down. That's got a lot of tension on it. That would hold, God, that would hold as many pencils as you want. That would work pretty well, perfectly, except for it's just so lightweight. I had this in the water and I was trying to pull this up to push the float down. That would support a lot. So this design is really good. It's just a little too delicate. I don't think it would last. It'd get all bent up. But watch what this does. The way that's hinged like that, that comes down pretty well straight. I could feed that in the gas tank right through that 1.5 inch opening. So I don't think I can use this, but that wasn't a total loss because I know exactly what I need now. I just need to recreate this out of something slightly heavier, but not too heavy. And basically I need better hinges. That wire would probably have been okay, and maybe even this rod coming down. The pivot points aren't good enough. But let me try to recreate this out of something that I think will last. And I bet you that little arm right there right now, probably with just one cork on there, I would say that probably supports 4 or 5 ounces. Let me tell you, or show you, let me go back out in the garage. I'll show you why I want that to be strong. All right, so here was my idea, my long idea here. You see I got the clutch assembly taken back off this. I also had this off. I've started putting it back on. Reason being, I have drilled a hole right here with a piece of 3/16 brake line going through it. And the hole back in the other one, I couldn't get my drill in there. So I tried that right angle drill. It wouldn't go either. So I had to take all this back off to get that back hole drilled. But I've got this 3/16 rod back here, and it rotates. The gas tank filler neck comes up right here. So that's going to be about where our float assembly is. I want to get a lever hooked from that float assembly, and it's got to be strong enough to lift some weight because I want it to be able to turn this rod. That rod continues on up and it's sticking through the back of the cab right there. I've got another piece of this that I'm going to extend onto it. And what I would like to do, clock hand here, what I would like to do is get that to where that clock hand will rotate like that and point it to empty or full. Then I'd have like a gas gauge right here on the firewall. I could put like a F and an E or something on there, you know. But I got to figure out a way to get all this together to where it works, and then try to figure out a way to where it keeps working, because it's all going to be kind of delicate, but it's going to be really cool if I can pull it off. Pretty elaborate plan, I know, but I have nothing better to do. Some of these things I found in a drawer that you hang a drop ceiling with. You run the wire through it to suspend your ceiling, you know. At the present moment, it's looking like 3 of those would make a pretty good hinge. So let's try that and see if we can make something up with this 1/8 inch round rod. That's probably just about right. It's a little stronger than the umbrella stuff, but not very heavy. So, see what happens here. All right, guys, I've been working along out here. That's a 1/8" round rod. I took a piece of the 3/16 brake line, already had a flared end on it, and I just hit it with a punch and made a rivet out of it. I was needing to cut them flares off the end anyway. This is made up to the same length that that last one was from the umbrella. I'm gonna take it inside and test it in the water once. And then I suppose we better pull the gas tank out of there and just see if everything even goes. I think that's got a pretty good chance of working. I'm trying to judge how much an ounce is. That's got to be holding a couple ounces, I'm thinking, of resistance. We're going to keep going with it. All right, guys, I got the gas tank back out, and I took a Sawzall with a fine blade in it, and I cut off the very top of that where the gas cap used to lock into. We're not going to be needing that. Left enough here to get our no-hub coupling clamped onto. Our corks fit, just barely, but they do go. I've got the other linkage rod put into there. I just put like a double bend in it. So that's working. Thought about how this float's gonna work. If I put this pivot point about at the center line of the gas tank, which is gonna be that seam, I put a bend in this rod because when this is full of gas, both corks are going to be floating in liquid. But as it starts to run out, I need that to set level on the bottom so that both corks are hitting the bottom when it's empty. And I would think as long as you saw the needle on that gas gauge inside kind of fluttering and fluctuating like in a smooth fluid way, you would know you still had a little gas. When that gets bouncing hard off the bottom, you're going to see that in the needle, and well, you're going to know you're in trouble. So anyway, it's looking to me like so far everything's good, like this is going to fit. So I'm going to keep moving here with it for a little bit, and I think I'm ready to stick this down in the hole. I think it goes. I haven't put it in yet, but all right, the corks are through. Now if we can get all this stuff in there and bend into place. Hey, how about that, guys? Let's see where we go from here. I can look down there and eyeball it and see the center line of the tank. And I've got that vice grip on there. I put a mark here and here, and I've only got about a 1/2 inch movement from top to bottom. And I think I'm gonna need more than that for the gas gauge to read right. I probably want, you know, about, I don't know, what, 75 degrees on that or something? From full to empty. Anyway, I'm gonna work on this a little bit and see if I can get a little bit more sweep out of that. The problem is the way I made that pivot point right there. You know, it's 3/4 of an inch above the axis of the rod. I need that down there right on it, or at least closer. And then I'd have more sweep on that. So I think I'm gonna cut that off of there, see what I can come up with here. I changed that pivot point. I got both corks on there and I bent an end on it so they can't slide off. I just went in and checked this in the water. I got really good lift on the buoyancy. So I'm gonna put it in there and see if I got any more travel now. Should be good if I do. Got about 7/8 of an inch of travel. I think I'm gonna have to make that work. My filler neck and our float. I just welded that round right on the inside of the pipe for a mount. So let's see if we can get this on there. We're about to have something here, I think. There it goes. I had put a reference mark on here, and then here, you know, so my gas cap lines up with my filler hole. That ought to be pretty close. The float's working freely. I wish I had a little more travel on it, but I guess we can read a needle off that. Hey, you know, even if I never make it any further, I'll be able to reach in there and do that and tell if I got gas or not. So even if I don't make the other thing work, that's still a win. I don't know if I'd ever have much gas splash out of that hole or not. I was gonna have like a, I was gonna have a piece of like sleeve in there, like a brake line going down, but this 1/8 inch round rod doesn't work very freely in that 3/16 brake line. I didn't have any 1/4 inch here. We'll see what happens. That gas level will be clear down there. It might not get too much up there. Yeah, we'll see what it does. But it's working good. This is all together. I got the fill tube in, the no hubs tightened up. I don't know what to say. That's doing floaty stuff. It seems like it can hold quite a bit of weight up in that configuration. And this back here, I mean, it's real easy to turn. I don't know, just have to get a little further and see if we can make all that work. Be cool if we could, right? Be cool if we could. Jeremy, it's the next day. It only occurred to me after going in the house last night, that won't go in like that. I gotta take the filler neck and float assembly back off and drop it in from the top after the tank's underneath. So I'm gonna work on that first thing this morning and see if I can get it back under the truck. Take a grinder and cut that out and see if I can make me a piece of linkage here. I had quite a time getting the gas tank filler neck back in with all that mechanical stuff in there. Finally got it. I've got all this built. It's working freely. It's not binding up or anything, and it seems to me like it should work. I put a temporary clock hand right there, just with a little silicone on top. It's sticking straight up and down. That's not where it's going to be, just so I could see how much sweep I had in the needle. I was trying to get as much as possible. We're in empty right now. It's going to go like that to full. Right now I got about 1 1/4 inch movement in the needle. I'm having a hard time getting any more. I would need to lift it closer to this pivot point right here, and I don't know how to do that, but I think that's good enough. Plus I'm getting tired of messing with it, so we're gonna call that good and just see how it works. And I think it might be okay. So I'm gonna kind of button all this up right here and see if I can get the field line ram. I'm thinking. I want to sleeve this. I think I'll slide a piece of 1/2 inch copper over that. Maybe sweat a cap on the end of it just so this is coming out the cap, and then put a couple straps on it just so nothing ever bends that. And then this here will protect some way too. Need a little protection there. But anyway, it's working. Kind of a cloudy, dreary day out here today. Not very warm either. Thought I had a piece of 1/2 inch copper. Look at that now, would you? There's a sweat cap. I think somewhere I've got that copper might leak, but we don't care. I think somewhere I got a 1/4 inch coupling. I might be able to sweat on there to extend that gas line. If not, we'll think of something different. If I can't find a 1/4 inch coupling, we might be able to swedge it, do it that way. Or maybe just splice it with a piece of hose and a couple clamps too, you know. That was a bit of an experience. Have you ever tried to weld two brake lines together? Yeah, me either. But luckily we don't need it to do brake stuff. We just need it to rotate. All right, guys, got a cap sweated on there. Got the needle on there where it's gonna go. I'm gonna make some kind of face on there with an F and an E, and don't know exactly how I'm gonna do it yet, but we got all kinds of sweep in the needle now. Ends up, I kept looking at that, trying to figure out what I could do to get more movement, more range on the needle. And it finally came to me after staring at it for quite some time. Let me show you what I did. All right, the last time I showed it, I had the pivot point over here, and then I had my arm reaching out this way, and then a long arm on this, and it was lifting on that long arm. And I needed to be able to lift it back here a lot closer to get more sweep. So I broke that off, welded a pivot point on the opposite side of my actuator rod, and then I just flipped this around. I bent a loop in this, and I've got a wire over the top of it, and that lifts that up, and I left that long on the back for a counterweight, so it'll go back to empty. And it works real easy. I think the floats will lift it just fine. And that's what I did, and it works perfectly, or it seems to. Just had to come to me, you know, and just went through a whole lot of work to get this gas gauge done. The clear tube underneath for a sight glass, that would have been so much easier. But you don't have the cool factor with that, you know, and not only is this a truck, even more than a truck, it's probably more of a conversation piece than anything. And what would you rather talk about, you know? A piece of clear vinyl tubing underneath, or this monstrosity I just made, which is pretty cool. Anytime you've got a piece of brake line with a clock hand glued onto it, and somehow it hooks into your gas tank and reads your gas level, that's cool. Anyway, I'm going in for today. I got a kit from my buddy Jeff Bezos over at Amazon. Had a bunch of stick-on numbers and letters in it. Well, I put an E there and an F there. That's really all I need, right? As long as it's somewhere pointing between them, I should be good. So we're gonna call that done for now. Turned out good. It reminds me of kind of a steampunk theme going on. Kind of like it. Looks like something they would have done like in 1899, you know. But it makes me think about the motorcycle throttles. Them very first motorcycles, they had all of this weird cam and gearing mechanism to where you could turn the throttle on the handlebars. They hadn't come up with a cable yet. So they had to have it so you could steer the motorcycle but not affect the throttle. And it was some ingenious gearing and levers and rods they come up with to do that. And I can't imagine what it took to figure all that out. And then a few years later, some kid comes up with a piece of cable running through a sleeve and says, hey, what about this? And, well, yeah, I guess that works too. But anyway, I like it. So let me show you what else I've collected over the last week. All right, I got the big pulley back off the axle once again. And no matter how tight I get that belt, it seems to want to slip. So I'm determined to get a chain and sprockets on here. My friend Troy had this big sprocket. That's a 74 tooth sprocket. It's aluminum. I'm gonna have to make a flange for it and bolt it to the flange. I need this offset back in here about 3 3/4 to 4 inches. So that should work. but I needed a sleeve. My uncle brought me this cylinder sleeve out of a semi truck that he thought would work. Is going to cut that, get it in here, make a faceplate for it with this bolt pattern, and then a flange at the back of it for the sprocket to bolt to. And try to get everything true and right. This flange, or this pipe, isn't quite big enough. I have about 6 5/8 inches across my axle flange. Inside diameter of this is about 4 7/8. So, John, if you're watching, need something just a bit bigger than this, a little larger diameter. 6 3/4, 7. As long as it's a little bigger, I guess it don't matter. But if we were looking for perfect, probably about 6 3/4, 6 5/8. And it's only got to be, give me a little extra to play with, maybe 5 inches long. But anyway, that's the design though. Also, Troy brought me over 2 sprockets for the top up here. One of them is 1 tooth bigger than the other. I think one's a 14 tooth and one's a 15 tooth. We figured up the math on this. The smaller one puts just a little bit over 5 to 1, and the bigger one is just right under 5. It's in the high 4s. So we'll decide on which one of them we want to use. And even the biggest one is about the same diameter as my upper pulley, so it should still clear the fender and fit under there all right. So that should go fairly easily. We just got to cut this pulley back off and weld one of those on and get it trued up. Right now, I think I got everything I need to do this, except for I need a bigger sleeve. And here's what else I've got. John had also brought me this piece of, I didn't measure it, I believe it's 1/4 inch plate. That's big enough that we can get a end cap for our sleeve to get our bolt circle back in for our wheel bolt pattern. And it's also big enough that we can trace out a flange for that. Actually, it's almost not wide enough. John, if you're watching, maybe a little wider piece of this too. That's a 7-inch bolt circle. So yeah, that needs to be maybe another 1/2 inch wider. But anyway, you can kind of see what my plans are. I just got to get all the parts collected here to do it. And then Troy had also brought me, I got a new chain, new old stock chain in this box. That's 520 chain and a master link. We held that chain up there and it's going to be long enough. And he also brought me this really cool old antique looking key switch. It's got the start position on it. I'm going to get that in there, and that looks perfect for this build. I mean, it looks antique-y. And look at that weird key shape. Kind of neat, right? I got 2 keys for it, so the wife can have one in case she wants to go to town. That should work good. As with most of these videos, I didn't get quite as far as I wanted to get, but I like what I got done, you know. And this was a major workout for my brain. I never took geometry in high school. Probably the closest I ever came to geometry was drinking beer and playing pool at the tavern. So the fact that I got this to work was pretty amazing, really. Anyway, I got a lot of stuff to button up. I got to get the belts and clutch put all back together, and I got the filler neck done on the gas tank, sticking through the side. Only thing left to do on that's make a gas cap or find a gas cap for it. And you can kind of see where I'm going next. As soon as I get the parts collected, we're going to start working on that chain drive. And I was wanting to get a gasket made for the differential cover in this video. Didn't quite get that done. And I also don't have the field line run yet. But all I've got here is the clear vinyl tubing. I'd like to have some black gas line to cut some short pieces for splices and get a fuel filter in there and stuff. So I'm thinking next time I'm in town, I'll just grab a foot section of it. But anyway, it's coming together, and if we can get this chain up and working, we'll be driving out of here pretty soon. Video's getting pretty long. I want to thank all you guys for watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one. Later, Jeremy.